is Matt Gibson. I'm the president of the Professional Travel Bloggers Association. I want to thank you for joining us in the last of our series of talks that we're doing here at ATM. Leading this talk today is going to be Karen Osmond. Karen, if you don't know, is the founder of Travel Inc., which is a content production service here in Dubai. So she helps companies to produce content for their websites, for their blogs, and for their social media. So she is among us probably the most qualified to deliver this talk on social media and blogging. I'll let her take it away.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'm super excited to be here today at Arabian Travel Market 2016 to talk about some of the latest trends in social media and blogging for this market. So why is digital content so important? The written word, we use it every day from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to sleep, whether it's looking at newspapers online, reading our favorite blogs, writing emails. It's such a huge part of what we do. So I think probably one of the best ways to show why content is so important is with a comparison. So this is Dubai Creek in the 1970s. How many of you grew up in the 1970s? Or perhaps a more polite question, how many of you had parents who grew up in the 1970s? A few, I'm sure. How many pieces of brand information do you think they were subject to on a daily basis? Bearing in mind they really only had access to the telephone, the newspaper, posters. Any idea how many brand messages they were subject to every day? Not so many. The answer is 500, just 500 pieces of brand information per day. And if we look at today, how many pieces of brand information do you think we're subject to on a daily basis? Any ideas? How many? 5,000, yeah. You're absolutely spot on. 5,000 pieces of brand information per day, which is a huge amount. So this is actually my parents in the 1970s. They got married in the mid-1970s. I was born in 1979, and they really didn't have any kind of smartphone technology, so that's why it was so low. This is my wedding just a few years ago, and I don't remember anyone having a professional camera. Everything was done by smartphone. In fact, the only person who had a professional camera was the professional photographer. So what impact does this have on our brand messaging, our digital content, our social media, and our blogging? Well, it's more competitive than ever before. With 5,000 pieces of brand information out there, your message really has to cut through the clutter. It has to be well written. It has to be engaging. It has to be authentic. And most importantly, it has to generate return on investment. So now we realize why content is becoming more and more important. I just want to do a quick definition of blogging. I'm sure a lot of you have an idea about what blogging is and what a blogger does, but for the purpose of this presentation, the definition is the creation of content for distribution on any online platform. This can be websites, blogs, case studies, online travel magazine. And I've actually stolen this definition from Matt Gibson, who is the inbound president of the Professional Travel Bloggers Association. And now is probably a good time to introduce Shane Dallas, my co-presenter today as well. So today I'm going to talk to you about three things. The first one, we're going to look at some trends for 2016 when it comes to social media and blogging. Then we're going to move on to some case studies. So who regionally and internationally is doing blogging and social media well? What are they doing and what results are they generating? And then finally, we're going to finish up with some tips and techniques that you can use for your own brand when using social media and blogging. So let's get started with trends. Let's start with social media trends. We all know social media is growing. And when I was putting this presentation together and doing the research, I was part horrified and part fascinated to learn that in the UAE in 2015, the population was spending an average of 3 hours and 35 minutes a day on social media. That's a huge amount. That's a quarter of somebody's day. So just keep that statistic in mind as we're going through some of these trends for 2016 regarding social media. So the first trend I want to look at is Instagram. Why? Because it's the fastest growing platform in this region. It grew 20% between 2013 and 2015. And what's also really interesting about Instagram is that it's one of the platforms with the highest levels of engagement. So a study by Forrester looked at 3 different platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and measured that engagement per 1 million brand followers. When we talk about engagement, we're talking about likes, comments, and shares. So you can see that the study showed that Facebook, for every 1 million brand followers, just had 700 pieces of engagement. Twitter was even less at 300. Instagram, interestingly, was 42,000 pieces of engagement per 1 million brand followers. So that's more than Facebook and Twitter combined. So if you as a business are not on Instagram, maybe worth considering for this year and beyond. Okay, the second trend I want to look at is video. Perhaps not surprising, being as by 2019, 80% of all internet traffic will be by video. But I want to get a little bit more specific, and I want to look at 2 trends within video. The first one is in-the-moment video, and the second one is interactive video. So let's take the first one. In the moment. Social media by its very nature is very much in the moment. However, tools such as Periscope are taking that to a whole new level. Periscope, of course, is where you can record events live and broadcast it to that audience in the moment. And collectively, Periscope users watch 40 years of video a day. So if you, as a marketeer, are using social media to schedule posts in advance, this trend is going to soon be out of fashion because consumers are looking for what's happening now, not what's happening yesterday or last week. So this is a real trend to capitalize on. The second trend within video is participation. So we all know that we consume videos, we watch, we enjoy, but now it's taking it to the next level and getting that viewer to participate in that video. And there's some fantastic examples out there. For example, Google videos, Google 360 videos, where you're actually moving the phone to guide the angle of the camera yourself. Some other examples are Twitter conversational ads, where the viewer is invited to answer a question on those ads. Also, Twitter scratch reels, where the image moves at the control of your button or your mouse. And of course, Facebook Live broadcasting as well. But even as a company, if you're not at that stage, video is still really, really powerful in itself. In fact, it has 62% more engagement compared to just using a photo. So investing in branded videos is really a worthwhile trend to capitalize on in 2016. The third trend within social media is buy now buttons. Facebook and Pinterest are already leading the way. Twitter, of course, is still testing its buy buttons, but I suspect by the end of 2016, most social platforms will have some kind of buy button within their campaign. And what's really interesting here is Pinterest. Traditionally, some people think of Pinterest as scrapbooking or a hobby. However, Pinterest is actually the highest average purchase sale at $50 out of all the platforms. And also interestingly, 92% of Pinterest users use Pinterest to plan their purchases. So when you're looking at the time you spend on social media and that return on investment, these are the kind of numbers that you want to be showing to show the benefit to your business, whether that's room bookings, airline seats, whatever it is, number of visitors. This is quite an interesting statistic right there in just how powerful buy buttons can be. Okay, so moving on to blogging trends now. I want to start with blogging as a business. The traditional perception of the blogger, and I think Matt described the blogger as somebody in their mother's basement writing away. I mean, that's long gone, and bloggers are now business-savvy individuals who are really able to show return on investment for the work that they do. So a study by HubSpot showed that marketeers, B2B marketeers who blogged generated 67% more leads, 55% more web visits, and 13% more return on investment. So companies are really beginning to realize just how powerful blogging can be as part of a communication strategy. And actually, the word blogger is also dying out. They're now being referred to as influencers. Why? Because bloggers are not just writers anymore. They're photographers, they're videographers, they're researchers, they're statisticians. Their power really lies in their ability to pull together extensive social networks and deliver real value to a target audience. The second trend I want to look at is long-form content. Now, we've all heard complaints how people don't read anymore. Social media has led us to have really, really short attention spans, and that is definitely true in some cases. However, when it comes to blogs, it is all about long-form content. Simply put, a 200-word article will not hold up against a well-researched, data-backed 1,500-word article. And of course, the more value that you can deliver to your reader, the more likely they are to trust you. So really take the time to develop your blogs, to research, make yourselves as trustworthy as possible in order to capitalize on this trend. And finally, collaboration. This is not a new trend, not by any stretch of the imagination. But as blogging is becoming more and more monetized, of course, new trends and innovation are starting to emerge. And this can be as simple as inviting a blogger or influencer to experience your product, to even bigger ideas, working with bloggers. And it's not just within the travel and tourism industry. Bloggers also have in some cases, extensive experience across other industries. So you will see a cross-semination of ideas there. So the next part, I just want to show some case studies of who in this industry is doing blogging and social media well, what they did and what results they generated. I want to start with the tourism board. This is Malta, Malta Tourism Board. Now, for those of you who don't know, Malta is a tiny, tiny island in the Mediterranean, just 400,000 in population. It's competing with some seriously sexy destinations in Europe. So how does the Malta Tourism Board entice visitors to its island? Well, what they did in 2014 and 2015 is they actually invited 72 bloggers to the island to experience it. They gave them access to all the cultural attractions, to transport, to hotels, and as a result, they generated content. So, to be specific, let me just get this right. They generated 1,500 Instagram photos, 6 videos, and 250 blogs. And the result that came from that was 7.6 million. So all that content hit 7.6 million social media accounts. Just to put that number in perspective, that is about the population of Switzerland. So a fairly impressive result. And if the Malta Tourism Board had decided that they would spend money on social media advertising, they would have had to spend 5 million euros to get the same results. So again, a really good case study there. The second case study is a little bit more closer to home. This is Jordan for a hotel brand called Mövenpick. And what they did was they arranged a tweet up to showcase 2 of their hotels in Jordan. They opened up their hotels to the bloggers, branded, gave them an incredible experience, and those bloggers generated 781 tweets. That doesn't sound like a huge amount, but the results that they generated from those tweets was, let me get this one right, was a reach of 3.7 million Twitter timelines. So again, when your numbers are in the millions, that's a really impressive reach for 2 days of activity. The final case study I want to share with you is a large international hotel company, Marriott, and they really take their content seriously. This image on the screen shows their in-house money-making content studio called M Live. They launched this in the US in October 2015. It's been so successful, I believe they've also launched it in Asia this year as well. And this is basically, you can see all the screens there, and that's basically showing live updates of social media campaigns, what their competitors are doing, what their editorial calendar is doing, what their live booking updates are doing. And it allows the team at Marriott to take advantage of the news in the world, what campaigns are running, and how they can capitalize on them. It also allows them to generate their own campaigns. And one of their biggest success stories was the launch of Marriott Traveler, an online platform for travelers' tips. Within 90 days of that launching, it generated 7,200 room bookings, not nights. So again, a pretty impressive result for 90 days. And a great example of a hotel company taking their content incredibly seriously. And now, so we may not all have the kind of investment to launch our own in-house content studios, but there are definitely things that you can do when it comes to social media and blogging for your own businesses to leverage and generate return on investment. So just out of interest, how many of you here blog for your business? 1, 2, 3, just like a handful. So I guess my first piece of advice is generate a blog on your website for your company. When you do, make sure you're including links in your blogs. Ideally, you want to be looking at least one link for every 100 words. Once you've done that, make sure you email the people or the organizations that you're linking to. This will encourage share and also encourage engagement. At the bottom of your blog post, make sure you have a related post button. This will encourage the reader to browse some of your other blogs. And again, it will all add to the share. Long content. Try to avoid putting short pieces on there. Try and keep it a minimum 500 words. It's better, maybe, I don't know if Matt will agree with me, but maybe better to do 1 or 2 really well-researched blog posts a month than try and do something every week that is shorter and not as, not as accurate or informative. Keep it chunky. Keep your text chunky, interspersed with great images so that you're going to really create an ideal reader journey, an enjoyable reader journey. Headlines are absolutely critical. This is what's going to come up on your Google search. So that headline needs a lot of thought. Try and keep that headline to 65 characters or less as well. And finally, collaborate. Blogging can be time consuming. So it's worth generating your own blogs, but also looking outside for social media influencers, professional bloggers who can complement the activity that you're doing. And then on the social media side, research is critical. Have a social media plan. I think that's fairly obvious. But use social media to find out what it is your target audience want to hear about. And of course, tools such as polls and votes are a fantastic way to get that engagement. Again, images are really, really important. If you use images on Twitter, you're 150% more likely to get engagement. LinkedIn is the same. If you use an image on your posts, then you're looking up to 98% more comments compared with no images. Branded videos, not always cheap, but definitely worth investing in. Put them on your homepage, put them on your product pages, and make sure you use third-party video sites such as YouTube. Remember, YouTube is one of the top search engines and a very, very powerful vehicle to spread your message. When you're using videos for social media, make sure you have a transcript underneath. Now, you may think, what's really the point? But 1, it's really, really good for search. And 2, it gives your viewer another platform to consume your content. For YouTube, try and keep your videos to 3 to 3.5 minutes. And of course, frequency is really, really important. Frequency also affects your Google Freshness score on your website, which is basically Google's way of measuring the quality of your website. The more you're posting and linking back to your website, the higher your score, and of course, the higher your search engine. So just after this session, my co-speakers here will also have a few more tips to give you on blogging and social media. So what have we covered today? We've looked at trends for 2016 to really capitalize on. We've looked at some case studies. The 3 M's is probably the easiest way to remember it. Malta, Movenpick, and Marriott. And then we've finished up with some tips and techniques that you can use for your own brand. So I guess the question is now, what is the future? We've come from the 1970s where people online are bombarded, from the 1970s where people weren't really online and only had access to 500 brand messages a day, to today, where we're being bombarded with 5,000 messages a day. So the question is, what does the future hold? What happens to the next generation? People like my son, who are already not even 2 years old and incredibly savvy, frighteningly so, on the laptop and the iPad. How many brand messages will he be bombarded with in 5 years, 10 years? It's going to be a huge amount, and it's going to be a lot more than 5,000. And as a result, content will become even more important. So if you want to survive in today's world of digital content, if you want to stand out and be memorable, and if you, more importantly, want to drive return on investment for all the effort that you put into social media and blogging, then you really need content that is memorable for all the right reasons. That's everything from me. Thank you very much. Those are my details. The next part of this session will be questions and tips. We have Shane, who has a lot to add in terms of social media. He's one of the most savvy social media experts I know. And then, of course, on the blogging side, we have Matt Gibson. So do you want to add anything before we go into questions?
For those who saw my presentation yesterday, I talked about the importance of being different. Now, Karen just gave a beautiful example then of how much content is out there. And there is so much content you cannot take it all in. It's impossible. So what's going to happen is you are going to remember the most memorable bits. Makes sense, doesn't it? And the way to be memorable, as I stated yesterday, was to be different. You need to be different. And there are two ways to be different. The first was to be creative. You need to be creative. Come up with something that nobody else could possibly do. But the second one, and the one that's probably a little bit easier, and this comes to working with influencers, is to be personal. To be personal, because when you're personal, you are telling a story that only you can tell. Now, to give you an example, a good friend from Fly Dubai just came in here, and while you were speaking, it reminded me of a story. I think it was 2 years ago, they sent me to Romania. Along with the trip to Canada, I described yesterday, it was the best media trip campaign I have ever done. The quality of the photos, we were talking about it on Monday, people are still talking about them. But you know what that was really interesting? Anyone can take good photos if you give it a bit of time. But there was one thing that was different. On the return flight, I sat in my favourite seat, 5A, and I sat down there. It was going to be an overnight flight, a red-eye special, coming from Bucharest back to Dubai. And I sat down and the captain got on, and he said, thank you, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our Fly Dubai flight from Bucharest to Dubai. It is a pleasure to have you on board, and Mr. Dallas, it's lovely to have you here too. And I thought, he said my name on the announcement. And I looked around like this, and the guy who was sitting behind me, the passenger, leant forward and he said, hello, Mr. Dallas. Now that story people remember because it's the story only I could tell. It's the story only I can tell. There was something that was different that happened to me that no one else can discuss. It was like I see Malaysia has walked in, one of my favourite countries, best food. If you've ever been to Malaysia, you got to go. It's got the best food in the world. And I remember going whitewater rafting in Malaysia. And I personally, I'm not very good in deep water. I have a bit of a fear for it, like heights. And I'm in the water and I'm bouncing along and people are falling out and I'm somehow managed to stay in. And that's a personal story, talking about how I interacted with people, how afterwards we all joined together and had this huge Malay banquet of food and families got around and shared food. And we ate with our hands, we had nasi lemak and everything. And that's a personal story. That is something I can tell sitting there, still wet and dripping from my whitewater rafting experience. And I was speaking to people from Nigeria, from Ghana at the back. I was talking to you before. When you're giving stories, give a story. Let's talk about Ghana. Give a story about Ghana. Give your personal story that no one else can tell. It's okay to talk about these are the best 5 sites of Accra. That's okay. But what about a personal story? What about your favourite restaurant? What about the favourite place to get together and listen to music? And isn't Africa music the best in the world? It is. Definitely it is. Give these stories. This is how you become different, by being personal. And the way to stand out is not just to follow what everyone else does. Don't follow what everyone else does. Follow what you want. Follow something you have passion in and something you believe in and something that's personal. And one of the greatest ways to be personal, and then I'll hand on to you, Matt, is you mentioned live video. Live video is so important now. And the reason live video is important is because it puts a voice and a face to the person who's making the writing. Writing is just one side. Interactive video, Periscope is very big. I've seen and I've actually been on a Facebook Live video, which is being rolled out now around the world. It's there. You can see the person. It adds a personal dimension. I do a lot of radio work. For those who saw me yesterday, I do radio work with Dubai Eye every week, so please listen. It's 3:30 every Sunday, and also on things such as ABC, Bondi Beach Radio, and American Forces Radio. The reason it's such a strong medium, just like podcasting, which is another trend as well, is it adds something personal. And I cannot stress enough, in a world which seems to be becoming more and more similar, and everyone's told to conform and do this, you need to have that personal perspective to really make your social media memorable. Over the mat.
Thanks, I get to follow that. No, that's awesome. Thank you, Shane. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about blogging. And this does pertain a little bit to social media as well. So Shane talked a lot about being different and being unique, which is really important. You have to stand out the same way your brand has to stand out, set itself apart from other brands with unique selling points. You have to have that when you're publishing online as well. Now, Shane likes to stress the part about being personal because he has a lot of personality. Not all of us do. So one thing that I also like to stress when it comes to this is being an expert and providing value. And you are an expert in something. You're an expert in your business and whatever it is that your business does. If you take people on walking tours of Dubai, you know downtown Dubai better than everybody else. And you can provide people with value. And that's something that's very safe. You know, trying to have a great personality that everyone likes, as we all know, doesn't always work, you know? But you can give people something that they need. And that will attract people to you, and it will attract people to your website. And those are the people that you want. Those are, generally speaking, going to be your customers. So you want to identify what are the problems that your customers face and help them to solve them. If you're on social media, you can help them by being a curator of information who knows your subject very well and providing them with articles on that subject from other publications that help to teach them more about it. I do this myself with professional bloggers. I'm constantly posting articles in our Facebook groups, on my Twitter, about the latest information to do with Facebook. Like, Facebook just announced a major update called F8 2 days ago. So I was posting articles about that for people, and they come to me for information, and they appreciate that, because my personality is terrible, but I tell them things that they really need to know about. Now, when you're blogging, not all of us are professional writers, and not all of us have spent a lot of time writing. So it feels intimidating to try and figure out what are people going to like. And if you're not accustomed to that, it can feel a bit overwhelming. Fortunately, the internet has solved that problem for us. You don't actually have to know anything anymore. The internet will provide you with the answer. So data has really taken over publishing. And you don't have to guess what people are going to like. It was terrible when I started writing and tried to guess what people were going to like. Now, we just have the information available. So let's say, for example, your company is selling tours in Jordan. And you want to figure out how to attract people that are thinking about traveling in Jordan. You can go to one of 2 or 3 websites that will show you what is the most popular content online related to travel in Jordan. Okay, you can go to one called the Open Site Explorer. This website, you can type in the URL of any website online, okay? So maybe you type in visitjordan.com or a Jordan travel magazine, and it will show you which articles in that magazine or on that website have received the most links in from other people who have read it, which is a really good way to determine how much people liked it or whether it provided them with some sort of value. There's a second website that's very similar called BuzzSumo. This one, you can type in a topic, such as travel in Jordan, or you could type in visitjordan.com. It will show you which pages on that site have received the most social shares in the past week, in the past month, or in the past year, so you can just see which content people loved. Then you can copy it, because it's the internet and that's what people do. Or you can go one better, which is always recommended, and try to do what we call skyscraping. Actually, Dubai is famous for skyscraping. You guys do this all the time. Someone builds the tallest building. What does the next guy do? He makes one that's taller. So you go out, you find the best content that your people are going to love, and then you make it better. And then you go tell everyone on social media. You pay for some advertising, and it brings in very qualified leads. And it's not even that difficult anymore. It's fairly simple and fairly logical. And I really advocate doing this. Spend a lot of time making good content, rather than trying to just put out a ton of content every single day. That doesn't really work very well. Focus on very high quality content. Make sure it's really good at solving a problem for somebody, it's providing somebody with value, and then spend twice as much time promoting it after it's finished and making sure that everybody knows about it. So that's my best tip for you guys. Anything to add, guys?
Is there any questions from the audience on social media, blogging, any of the topics that have come up today?
Can I just add something? He says he doesn't have personality. That is not true. He is a great guy, a lot of integrity. He's president of the... Are you incoming president? Incoming president. Or for another week, incoming president of the Professional Travel Bloggers Association. But there's two approaches. There's no actually correct approach. I put a lot of emotion into the information I give into my posts. And some people like to be you're a bit more factual. And there's no right or wrong. It's just what you feel is right. But I do take Matt's point that, yeah, putting facts in there, you just can't tell a personal story. So if you're going to mention, say, for example, the very nice restaurant I was talking about before, you've got to say where it is. It's not just that. And I know that it's important, for example, and you can tell story, I just have to say the story, you can tell stories in quite a different way. I went to the Kurdish region of Iraq, or Kurdistan, a few years ago, and I went to the museum which was put up about the atrocity Saddam Hussein did to the Kurds, and there were these old Saddam Hussein tanks that he had in his regime, and there was a school group in, and the children were playing on the tanks, hanging off the barrel of the tank, and they were laughing and carrying on. And the Kurdish guy took out, and we looked at these children playing in these tanks, and he said, "Old Iraq, new Iraq." And it said beautifully what I had witnessed there, what had gone before and what had come since. But the only way to make that story talk was to actually fill in some of the history as well, give the facts that Matt said. So there's a bit of a balance. There's no right or wrong way. You can do the emotive way, you can do the factual way. You can combine them, it's okay. But it's got to be something that gives your brand a unique voice out there in the world. So I just wanted to add that, and the main reason is he does have personality, so don't believe a word of that.
Questions? Yeah, there's one here. I'm just going to give you mine for now.
So, Dania, I'm just curious, based on your experience, what social media platform you would suggest as the most effective at the moment, given all the new trends with Snapchat and the traditional platforms?
So your question is, what are the most effective platforms on social media at the moment? Your line of business, Fly Dubai Aviation. Are you talking about aviation for your business or just in general? In general, okay. Well, Instagram, I think, is a huge one. 20% growth is massive, absolutely massive. But I think, again, I don't want to answer your question with a question, but it really, really depends what your business is, who your target audience is, and those kind of factors come into play. But I think I'm actually going to pass over to Shane, who may give some more insight.
Yeah, that's a bit of a loaded question for me, that one. It depends on where you are and what you do. So, for example, I think Instagram is made for food blogging. For people who do food in restaurants, the square shape, the round shape of the plate seems to perfectly match the square shape of an Instagram photo, which is square in shape, unlike Twitter and others which have the standard photo shape. I think it really does depend on where your market is. For example, Pinterest is not big here at all. But it's very big in North America. I love Google+. As I said yesterday, I have more than 85 million views on Google+ now, and I get basically 2 million a week. And it's not that big here, but I can tell you in parts of the world it is a lot bigger, and it just depends. I think Saudi Arabia, is the biggest user of YouTube. I think that's right in the world. Yeah. Do you think this is? Yeah. Yeah, I believe it is. So if you're trying to market something in Saudi, well, YouTube is the way to go, isn't it? And say, for example, people in Africa, that's where I'm based in Kenya at the moment, where Facebook is everything. People have online shops all through Facebook, selling hair extensions, selling clothes, selling everything. And it's the number one way people actually promote themselves. So it depends on your market. But for me, for airlines, look, I think what I've seen done very well for airlines is Periscope. And the example I'm going to use is Finnair. And Finnair have this Periscope channel, which is live video. It's owned by Twitter. And they were showing their new aircraft. And this guy with this fantastic English accent came on. And he took us through a tour through the new plane. And then on another day, he was so interesting. He showed a plane landing on the runway. So they went out with the ground crew, and this plane landed, and it was a huge, one of the larger bodied planes, and it looked fantastic coming down in this rain. And then they interviewed someone who's a technician on the plane. He was talking about what he does and what's like working at the airport. He gave the personal story. You see the interview, and it's interesting when he gave that personal story. On Periscope, you press it and the hearts come up. When this guy started talking, the hearts went crazy because you had a personal story. And there's another guy called, I can't think of his name now. He's from London. He's a Filipino blogger in London, and he is the best one out there, Filipino Periscoper. And he always gets lots of hearts. But there was one time he went into an art exhibition, and he happened to bump into 3 tourists visiting. I think there were 2 from South America, and I can't remember the third. And as soon as these tourists they're saying, hello, how are you? And they were talking in this Periscope, the hearts went up again. People love this sort of thing. So for an airline, it's okay just to show you your beautiful 737, all the new planes. But what about speaking to a member of the cabin crew? What about speaking to a pilot? What about speaking to a ground tech or someone who's doing the catering? And then that adds. So again, I'm going to go back to the live video. I do think it's extremely strong at the moment, and it is becoming more and more and more as the months go on.
Thank you. One more.
May I add? Whoa. Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Can I just add something to that real quick? Sorry about that. I'll be fast. I just wanted to add something, which is a general travel thing, like everyone has said. When you're choosing a social network to market through, it does depend on who your audience that you're trying to reach is, demographically and geographically. But that said, when you're talking about travel, there is one thing that really stands out when you're talking about social networks is the fact that images work the best. Because when you talk about travel, you're talking about language barriers when you're marketing. You want something that's going to cross language barriers. You want something that's going to appeal to someone who speaks English or French or German or Arabic or Farsi or whatever. And a picture does that. And a video does that. So I would say that, well, Facebook has video now. That works great. YouTube and Instagram, when you're marketing travel, are still probably going to be the most effective and give you the most for your dollar simply because you can communicate without words.
If you want to see, I remember the Periscoper, Orion, O-R-I-O-N. If you want to see the best scoper out there, his personality and everything and how he does it, if you want to model yourself over anyone, he's just a private guy, Orion on Periscope. He's the best one I've seen in the world.
Thank you. Question? Just.
Please will ask, then I'll ask afterwards.
Go ahead.
I want to ask, when it comes to blogging, is it your web? Does your web work more, or you leverage on the high-tech provider, which is Google? Which one works more for blogging?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Which works best?
Yes, when you're blogging, using your own web for blogging.
Your own
or-
website, okay?
Yeah,
Or
leveraging on the provider like Google. They have what they call Blogspot,
Yeah.
WordPress, and the like. So, which one works best?
I think they work really well together, and I think a really effective strategy is to use, you know, your own blog and your own platform, because one of the major aims is driving traffic to your website, and a blog is a fantastic way to do that. I mean, there's just no debate. However, you know, working with professional bloggers, social media influencers is you know, very, very effective. Why? Because they have those networks. They know what they're doing. They're doing this for a living every day for different clients all around the world in some cases. So, you know, I think that the two complement each other very, very well. It depends how much budget you have. Obviously, if you're generating your own blogs and putting them on your website and sharing them, that's a lot less than, you know, looking at social media influencers and developing specific campaigns with them. So I would say both are very, very effective. And I think the other benefit of your own website is you're creating your own audience. When you're working with a social media influencer, you're using their audience. So you're tapping into their audience, not developing your own. So do you have anything to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, I just want to add that if your business is selling something online, you're probably looking for more traffic from SEO, and blogging is one of the best practices that you can do for your SEO, which might not even bring people because of the articles, but have them landing on sales pages. So the SEO value is huge. And the one thing that people really refer to a lot when they talk about blogging and content marketing, as opposed to, say, advertising, if you buy an ad slot on TV, you get 13 seconds or whatever, and then it's gone forever. You buy an ad in a magazine, you get it for a month, and it's gone forever. You build a blog, you own your content forever. And that's one of the huge values that blogging brings that other forms of advertising don't.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Hi, Karen. I have a sort of 2-for-1 question here. I'm ethno trainer, and this is Yvonne beside me, so we can kind of do it 2-in-1 for you. And to the charming gentleman with the wonderful personalities, in fact, to you all on this one. A continuation of your question, great minds do think alike, there we go. But also, would you put what's on the content of your blog, would you add that then perhaps to various groups on LinkedIn? Would that be a good idea to do that,
Yeah.
to sort of cross-fertilize other particular groups within that niche, within the genre?
Yeah.
And I'll hand it over to Yvonne now.
Yeah.
Very quick question. I just wanted to know the second page, the resource site you mentioned after Open Site Explorer. Can't remember the name. Something Buzz. BuzzSumo.
BuzzSumo.
Thank you.
Ethna, should we answer your question? So basically, your question is...
You know, okay, good enough doing your own blog and trying to push that out.
Yeah,
And then
of course,
after
leveraging
that,
groups.
you know, leveraging perhaps groups on LinkedIn or I don't know, on other blogs. Or I should actually know this. I'm kind of ashamed that I'm here asking
Yeah.
you this, but
Yeah.
I've been a bit distracted and busy with other stuff. Thanks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As Matt said, you know, it's putting the work into creating the content, but then doubling that effort to share that content. And I think the benefit of groups, you know, that sit on platforms like LinkedIn is that you can make it really, really relevant to your industry, your target audience. So definitely that's certainly a strategy I would advise in terms of sharing your blog posts and getting it out there.
Hello. All right. Okay. My question is this. It's somewhat similar to hers, but mine is from a perspective of a supplier, you know, and then we're supplying different travel services or products as you want to take it. It's not just one way. So how does one build content, you know, for that? Like you're supplying airlines, you're supplying plane tickets, you're supplying tours. So it's a lot as a travel agent. You know, you're supplying other services from other companies, you know, from other travel industries. So how do you build content, you know, especially online content, considering that it's not just one service, you know, you're selling? Yeah. Thank you.
This is an absolutely brilliant question. I love this question. So basically, what's your name?
Excel from Nigeria.
Excel?
Yes.
Excel? Excel is basically asking if you have multiple target audiences, how do you cater one blog to those different target audiences? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, not just one blog. Generally, social media content, from blog to videos to Facebook to images and all of that. But the key thing here is you're selling different. You have different services, you know, to different audience. You know, you're selling flights. You know, selling airlines, you're selling tour operators, you're selling hotels, you're selling car hire services. So how do you personalize your space, you know, without necessarily being, you get, right?
Yeah. I think there's a few ways that you can approach this. One, you can look at what is the product that generates the most revenue for you and decide to focus on that. And make that, you know, your kind of main focus as in a niche. Or look at your different target audiences and see what they have in common. And they will all have something in common that you can then link through all your posts, your messaging for a common theme, if you will. So they will, you know, airlines, hotels, tourism boards, they will all have the same challenges at some point. Not all the time, but at some point they definitely will. So just brainstorming around the common themes is quite a good way as well. But I also think niche, you know, is definitely one way to be memorable and to stand out. And if you're trying to talk about so many different things, it's easy to become not as memorable, but I'm sure these guys have a lot more to add as well.
Sorry, are you B2B or B2C? B2B. So you're both.
B and B2C.
Oh God.
I know, that's a lot, right?
Okay. Yeah. In that case, there's different ways to approach it, right? There's no question that it's always a difficult and complex problem, and there's no best way. There's just different ways. Like Karen said, you can generalize to try and find something that connects everybody. Your business is all related to Nigeria, correct?
So
okay.
It relates to Nigeria, but the greater markets, you know, is actually outside Nigeria.
Okay.
Europe,
and,
America, Dubai.
Okay, so then the one thing that connects everyone is travel, basically.
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty broad. So you have the choice of focusing on travel or segmenting your marketing. So you deal with businesses, and in that case, you would probably have one section of your blog or a separate place for business-focused things that are addressing business people's needs. You'd also have a separate email list or a segment of your email list where you're capturing those specific business leads and putting them on a business-only email list, because you're not going to send them specials for flights to London. You're sending them, you know, business stuff. And with the customers, again, you may even segment that to inbound and outbound and have some Nigeria-focused inbound content that's going to attract inbound potential customers put them on an inbound email list so you can market to them, and then outbound being one segment and have it split up that way. Otherwise, you're going to do general travel, which is sort of a shotgun approach, but if you have few resources, that's more manageable. So it's just the way you want to handle it and what's manageable for you.
That is an excellent question. In fact, the questions over our 3 sessions have been very strong. It depends on your different platforms. So, for example, on Instagram, I found that, and it's a trial and error, I found that photos of people aren't quite as good as photos of landscape. And so for you, what I would do is maybe try a week for each. I mean, assuming there's no holidays. So you might do a week of, say, accommodation, you might do a week of some luxury resorts, you might do a week of a destination and see the reaction, but make sure you keep it consistent. If you're going to be on Twitter and Facebook, every post has to come with a photo, every one. Because if you do 1 week with one photo and the next week doesn't have photos, well, obviously the photo is going to win because, as was told before, visual, visual, visual. So I would do that, and then you'll start to learn. If you have something such as Pinterest, you can categorize them. If you have Google Plus Collections, which is one of my favorite platforms, then you can categorize. So you can have, for example, here's our holidays to the America, here's our holidays to Europe, here's our holidays, and you can put them all into different, and here's inbound, and there are different ways, but each one has a different one. I can put a photo of a beautiful scene on Instagram, and it just doesn't seem to do that well, and then I stick it on Twitter, and it goes crazy. Or I put something on Twitter, and the reaction is maybe okay, and then I put it on Google Plus, and it goes nuts. So it's so it just varies. It's a trial and error, but just trial it and you'll see. But it's going to take time. There's no quick solution to this. And as you've heard, not one size fits all. Everything is different for every reason. We could both be promoting the same, so 3 of us can promote the same destination, and because our audiences are different, they're going to react differently. So, but trial and error. Back to Karen.
And also the power of the editorial calendar will really help you as well, strategy. So I think we have time just for one more question. There's one there. We have one more? Yep.
Sheikh, hi. My name is Abdul Rahman. I represent healthcare, medical tourism, and we cater to the luxury segment.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just a little curious from your end. I want to hear from the experts. What, according to you, is the online or the social media behavior of the classes and not the masses? Understand? The luxury segment, what is their online behavior, the social media behavior? How do we reach them? When I'm going to a focused audience, the luxury segment, the high net worth income group, are they online? If they're online, where are they found?
Yeah.
Am I clear?
So basically your question is the luxury traveler who's traveling for medical tourism, what is their social media behavior?
Right.
You want to answer that one?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's not an easy question. Everyone wants to know where you find the rich people and make them buy stuff. Yeah. Right. What countries are you looking at? Western countries? Gulf countries?
Primarily Middle East as of now.
In that case, I have no idea. No, I really don't. Facebook is probably your best bet because you can, because everyone's on it, basically. If they're on one thing, they're going to be on Facebook. And if you're using Facebook advertising or a Facebook page, you can target people based on their geographic region, based on their age, based on their income, based on their education level. So yeah, you can zero in on those people, and if they're on one thing, it's Facebook. If you're looking for Westerners, also, Pinterest tends to be really good. It tends to be older females on Pinterest who, even if they're shopping for something for the family or for the husband, they're still the ones making the decision about what's getting bought, and it's a really good way to reach them and bring them to your website.
One sentence: the more active you are, the more likely they are to find you.
I actually do quite a lot of work in the luxury sector, and I find one thing that works well is exclusivity and things like partnerships, tie-ups with similar brands who already have that audience is perhaps quite a good route to go. But that's quite a long conversation. Maybe we can chat after this session. Oh,
Sorry, Karen just reminded me of something, is that also Facebook, if you find somebody who has your audience that you're looking for, Facebook enables you to create something called a shadow audience, where it won't let you copy their audience, but it will let you create a demographically identical audience that you can target to like your page or to advertise to them and market to them. So if you know somebody already reaching them, you can mimic their audience and target it exactly.
great. Well, thank you. Oh. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. We've actually come to the end of our session, but the three of us will be available if you have any other specific questions. I'm also going to put my business cards at the front, so please feel free to email me or contact me on those details. Thanks again for coming and listening.